All right. So, hi, my name is Lauren Widmeyer, and we are all with the Association for Short-Term Rental Homeowners. And we're excited to partner today with ATLIST to answer some of your burning questions. So we have Heather and Heidi also with us, and I think we're good to just jump right in and start answering. So the first one that we have is winter cancellations due to COVID-19. So how are we managing them? What are some best practices? Have you shifted cancellation policies? So let's just talk about that. Heather, do you want to start?
Sure. So cancel policies vary by channel, as most of you probably know, and you kind of have to select from a menu of policies as to what's going to work for you. What research has shown is that the more flexible the policy that you offer, the better your conversion can be to get the booking. But, it also leaves you open to cancellations and then having to try to quickly rebook that lost revenue. But ultimately, there is no magic bullet. Every market, every type of home may be better suited to different cancel policies. And testing the policies is really just the best way to do that, to figure out what works best for you. But if you do have cancellations due to COVID, and if they are within penalty, guest communication best practices really come into play. And so much of it is related to, or, is done via text or email and the messaging platforms. But ultimately, if you can pick up the phone and actually get that person on the line, you might be able to work out a better situation. So you don't get a bad review, or so that you don't, lose revenue entirely. You can rebook the guest. But there's also insurance available to the guest, so depending on if they book that or not could be a factor. So it's complicated, right? In whether or not there's insurance and what policies and if they're within penalty. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Yeah, Heidi or Lauren, if you would add to that, that's just kind of the basics, and it's a difficult topic and there is no right answer for everyone.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of insurance opportunities, both from the host and the guest perspective, to protect on both sides. More and more are emerging into the market, it seems like, on a monthly basis. So we should probably cover one of those topics in one of our ASTRHO events down the road, actually. But yeah.
One thing I will add to the Airbnb cancel policy changes here in January. There was a big announcement on that. So that's just something else to watch. I think the change to the policy is more favorable to the host in that it will require a little bit more from a guest to allow them to cancel. So a lot changing in this space.
I think there's also, just to add to that quickly, opportunity to try to get guests to rebook with you at a later date. So you're not just losing the booking altogether. But yeah, that was all I wanted to add.
Yeah, as long as you put in some fair parameters, say within the next 6 to 12 months, it doesn't have to be 3 years out, then a lot of times that works for people still.
All right, well, cool. So next question that we have is what to factor in when pricing your STR, your short-term rental. So maybe we talk about some technology or length of stay pricing. So yeah, what should we consider when we're pricing?
Yeah, this topic is really near and dear to my heart. Pricing and revenue management is such a key piece to running a successful short-term rental. So, ultimately, a consumer is going to pay what they believe is a fair price in the market. And understanding what's happening in your city and what's happening with your competitors is important to getting the price right and making sure you're showing up with a rational price. And with technology, pricing is becoming much more dynamic. It's more common to see prices change daily versus just setting a price and having it stay the same, for a given month. And by changing your price, you can capture a booking potentially last minute. We know that booking windows have shortened with COVID. And by being able to increase your price in a really nimble way, helps you yield and gain more revenue when you see demand in the market is increasing. So there's certain principles too, with revenue management, like length of stay, to protect peak nights and try to fill shoulder nights, or thinking through too, are you going after weekend stays or, week-long stays versus can you get 3-week, 4-week plus stays with a digital nomad type customer? So, figuring out which customers you want to go after and thinking through those pricing strategies, understanding the demand in the market, but adding technology, pricing technology, automated pricing technology is becoming easier, more affordable, more common, and really can enable you to have more sophisticated pricing strategies. So it's a lot. It's a big topic. We actually are teaching a course on pricing and revenue management in Q1 at ASTRHO. So we're excited about that. But yeah, Heidi or Lauren, jump in.
Well, I'm curious. People are always asking, how do I take advantage of a month-long stay? Because nowadays people can do that. You can book for 1 to 2 months. And so how do you make sure that your pricing is reflected in that? If you're using any kind of technology, it can get a little tricky. But some of the partners that we've worked with, they have that capability where you can say if somebody searches for 30 days, then it's going to factor for that price for you automatically. And it doesn't have to be this brain damage back and forth necessarily with the guest and the host.
Yeah, that's true. With some of the revenue management systems, you can have those 30-day plus stay pricing strategies and configure them so that they show up for anyone searching that long a length of stay. But there are other channel strategies too, like Zillow or Furnish Finders, which you may not have like direct connectivity. It might be more manual, but it could be a way to reach a different audience.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But,
okay.
Yeah.
So speaking of length of stay, just this season in general, are we seeing any different booking trends? So like length of stay would be one. Are people doing, are we seeing more drive market bookings, or what trends are we seeing in the marketplace?
It seems like one of the biggest, I think everybody can agree on, is drive to markets outside of major urban areas, because many people are still a little leery of getting on an airplane. So driving where it's secure, getting to your own vacation rental, short-term rental, where you can control every or most of those variables is very key. And outside of the cities, because if those are on lockdown at all, people are looking for ways to get outside and still recreate and be safe. So definitely drive to country type markets is huge. Also making sure that you have a good setup for somebody to work from your vacation rental. So a nice workstation, having really solid Wi-Fi so that people can do Zoom meetings and not skip a beat. Those are pretty crucial as well as far as those factors and trends. Making sure your cleaning is up to a certain standard as far as COVID regulations. That's obviously key. And contactless check-in, check-out. That's probably the #1 searched feature, I think, on a lot of the different booking platforms, is making sure you can say, you can check into this property and you don't have to see anybody face-to-face if you don't need to. So that's a really big trend for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can say anecdotally, just living in Aspen in the mountain area, I mean, it's busy up here. I mean, people are escaping from Denver and more of the Front Range, and everyone's at their mountain house or short-term rental in the mountains. And so, I mean, I'm definitely seeing that trend happening. So
people are even specifically looking for a cabin in a lot of cases, because they're like, well, if I'm going to leave my house, I want to stay somewhere cool. So let's go for that whole rustic cabin type approach, which I find really interesting. So yeah, like the Smoky Mountains cabins up there have been a really hot item lately as well.
mm-hmm.
And though the booking window has shortened because the uncertainty of COVID, has led people to not plan as far in advance, we know that there's a lot of pent-up demand for people that want to travel going into 2021. So you may not see the same pickup now as you had for same time last year, for February, for example, but it may still be coming. And just to be cautious and thoughtful about your pricing, because the belief is there is pent-up demand. And, as long as everything continues to look more positive for COVID, it should be a great year for travel next year.
Mm-hmm. So the next question that we have from the team is best ways to communicate with guests throughout their stay. So what are some best practices here? Is it via text, email, chat, and messaging within the unit? So let's talk about a couple ways to optimize that.
I think it's a nice touch to just pick up the phone, like you mentioned earlier, Heather, where it's so easy to send a quick text or a message, but it can tend to be impersonal. Or if you're dealing with any kind of a delicate subject at all, having that conversation on the phone where it's contactless, obviously people feel a little bit safer, but you can still have that personalized touch with a phone call. I think that goes a long way because it takes an extra minute, but again, it's personal.
I think that was one thing we've talked about before in another area, but it's just having an actual conversation with someone, especially if you're trying to diffuse a situation potentially, is always better than texting, because it just reiterates that you're a real human being. And so people are less likely to be as angry or mean, for lack of a better word, but.
Yeah. Well, and just simple things like most properties have a binder with instructions and directions and how to find everything. And I found so many times checking into a short-term rental, it'll have a page in the table of contents that'll say, here, Wi-Fi code is on page 5. And you go to page 5 and it doesn't exist. Where they've moved the Wi-Fi code to maybe something on the refrigerator or somewhere right at the front door when you walk in. And so making sure everything like that is up to date so that they don't get frustrated and trying to find very critical pieces like that. That's huge. So
I could add, with ATLIST, I know this is something we've talked about with them too. And when you're trying to communicate experiences in the area or, extra offerings, having that QR code capability, and is it framed? Is it just what is that communication? So it's really clear in the unit. Just lots of ways you can get creative there.
You can. I mean, even restaurants aren't handing out menus in places where restaurants are open. They're making you scan a QR code and read it on your phone. So the same concept can apply into a property and keeping it more safe and clean.
Yeah. No, I agree. And the QR codes are easier than ever. You don't have to have an app. You just open your camera and then you're on the website. It's so easy. And I think a really great way to communicate.
And some people still need the directions of how to use a QR code. I just learned how to do it 2 weeks ago. I didn't realize my iPhone camera would actually open the code. I was like, wait, I don't have that app. And it works. So having a little blurb of, hey, here's how you use this to simplify, that can make a big difference too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then just continuing on with the communication, I think it's always a great idea to keep people's emails on hand. And so, following up with people after checkout, trying to solicit good reviews when they've had a great time, and trying to get that repeat guest. So emails are always crucial to keep on hand and utilize for follow-up marketing purposes.
On that note, I actually just read recently that a lot of hosts are frustrated because they'll have a guest with a perfect stay and they'll only get a 4.5 star review. And they're like, well, why didn't I get the 5-star review? Sometimes communicating with the guest during their stay is what makes the difference between a 4 and a 5-star review, because it might have been almost perfect, but they didn't want to bug the host. So if you have that little proactive moment of outreach, then you can help ensure that 5-star review because you can handle that problem before they check out. So it can definitely leave a good lasting impression if you handle it proactively.
Mm-hmm. Are there any final thoughts on that one?
No, I think you guys covered it all. Yeah, communication is important.
Nice. Yeah, and I think everyone likes to, just to wrap that one up, just everyone has a different communication preference. And so it can vary by guest. Some people will just want to text. Some people just want to email. Maybe some people don't ever check their email. So making sure that you understand like how your guest wants to communicate with you, and then just leveraging that channel, I think, is important.
Mm-hmm.
So. So the last one that I think we wanted to cover here is just how to identify and promote unique services at your property. So, yeah, Heather, do you want to take on that one?
Sure. The, obviously partnering on ATLIST with this is a core area for them, right? So making sure that the guest has a great stay includes, enhancing the stay with activities, amenities, and making sure it's consistent throughout the whole property. So that's from, the guest journey, right, is the way we think about that. From when the unit is booked, that the images align with what actually is experienced once the guest arrives. Is there a pre-arrival email, letting them know about key things before they arrive, or pre-arrival text? And then again, are you promoting some of those extra offerings prior to, and then again once they're on property? So going back to what we talked about with Wi-Fi and having a good desk and making sure any experience you're offering, any of those enhanced features or experiences that come along with the property are part of the listing, and then communicated again pre-arrival and then on property wherever possible. So just thinking through the whole guest journey from booking to pre-arrival to on-site.
Well, and along those lines, something as simple as your photos. I mean, we've been drilling in photos for a long time, how critical it is to have the right photos, the right resolution, professional quality. Even upgrading more than just on your iPhone can make a big difference. But let's say you add that workstation because you're trying to appeal to the nomadic workers, having a picture of that workstation. So remembering to add that into your photo set. Little steps like that can make a huge difference, because you can't necessarily select it on an amenity, but you can feature it in your photos as your third one, for instance. So it could be this amazing remote cabin with really strong Wi-Fi, and then this great workstation in front of a beautiful window overlooking a lake. So highlighting those unique services, that's going to set you apart from your competition.
Yeah, I agree. And then I think just features that are like unique to your destination too, to make sure you're highlighting those throughout your listing. Like if you are in a mountain town and you have a fire pit outside, like making sure to capture that, and you have like the right lighting and it looks good, and then ensuring that photo is, featured in your listing is super important.
Yeah, and if you provide s'mores, all the ingredients to make s'mores, put that in your photo. How cool is that, instead of in your description? Because we're so visual, it's going to sell it so much faster and better in a photo than in buried a few paragraphs down in your description. Still good to highlight, but yeah, just get creative with those sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other final tips, just general tips to make your listing stand out on the channels, or?
From the, we recently talked to some designers we had as part of some education, and a few that I remember were, making sure that that golden hour is used to take your pictures, right? That if the sun is setting near the pool, how great is that image? Using that north-facing light, always thinking through that whenever the images are being taken, just really enhances any shot. A double duvet, I thought, was a good one, in that getting that extra fluffy bed for the photo shoot, and using a steamer, really having a critical eye on where there are wrinkles in any drapes or bedding. So just that those images are just perfect, spot on lighting, wrinkles, fluffy factor. And if you look at your images that you have right now with a critical eye, and you think about ways to enhance it, how much more that can make your listing stand out.
Oh, absolutely. Showing games, showing what kind of coffee maker you have, showing what kind of, is it a toaster oven or a real oven? Getting into those really specific features. Absolutely. That can really help sell it.
Did you guys talk about on that call you mentioned, Heather, how often to do a photo shoot or how often to refresh your images? And then are there best practices about changing out imagery seasonally?
Oh, absolutely, right. Especially if you're in a seasonal market where people, ski in the winter and mountain bike in the summer, that seeing, a picture of a snowy mountain when you're booking your July trip is such a disconnect. And if you can trace for yourself to do kind of that image swap out seasonally, it can go a long way in driving conversion.
What do you guys think about titles, changing the titles ongoing that are somewhat triggered towards local events happening or that sort of thing? Do you think that's a worthwhile strategy?
I would say I'm going to answer that yes and no. Like, I think for sure in the description you would want to edit that, but people are getting more and more savvy, especially if you have your own direct booking website, to name your property on Airbnb or Vrbo as the same as what you're calling it on your website, so that if people are searching for that particular property, it's going to show up like your direct booking website. It has the opportunity to show up and you can capture that directly. And then the longer you have that page and that name on your site and you're not altering it, I mean, the stronger the SEO value is behind it. So changing the title all the time, I wouldn't necessarily recommend, but slightly shifting copy to speak to the season, I would say would be a good practice.
So on that note, Lauren, if you have an SEO, or if you have your own direct booking website, are there any other SEO tidbits that can help drive some more traffic your way that you can think of?
I would say just go hyper local with the destination keywords that you're targeting. It's going to be really hard to compete against like a big channel, obviously like Vrbo or Airbnb, who spend billions of dollars on advertising, and then just have all of those properties. Like they have 150 properties in your area and you only have your one, So really talking about like just honing in on that particular area, talking about local restaurants and coffee shops and where to walk your dog, and just answering people's questions that they have about your area will really, really help you to just get your little website to rank. So that would be my suggestion there.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I think those were all the questions that we had from the ATLIST team. So yeah, Heather, Heidi, anything you want to say to wrap it up?
I think we should do more of these. Bring on some more questions.
Yeah, we'd love to do it again. We have a lot of fun digging in and helping answer questions. So
yeah,
thanks. Thanks for inviting us. It's a ton of fun.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Bye. See you soon.